Everybody, welcome to another episode. Nope.
Wait,
Always
wait,
happens
let me grab my bottle
every
of
week.
water. I just
Do it. Do it.
Okay, go.
there we go.
Hey,
Okay, I'm back,
everybody.
I'm back.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Comic Beat Insiders. This is episode 56. It is a weekly podcast that Heidi McDonald and I do. We started last April covering comics, TV, film, and whatever we want to talk about. This month, May, is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and we are celebrating it because hey, I'm Asian American, and also it's a good thing to celebrate. And so this week, we're going to cover like TV and film and actors and everybody involved, Asian Americans in TV and film. My name is Jimmy Aquino with the podcast Comic News Insider, the weekly podcast covering comics, TV, film, and pop culture.
And I'm Heidi McDonald. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Beat at comicsbeat.com.
And I'm Therese Lacson. I'm the entertainment editor at Comics Beat and also the co-founding editor at Nerdophiles.
And I'm Kui. I write stuff.
Be like, and I'm Kui. That's it. Kui is Kui is an old pal of mine from New York City in the theater days. He's being humble, of course. He's the co-writer of the giant smash hit Raya and the Last Dragon for Disney's new film. He's done many multiple award-winning theater here in New York City and worldwide. His plays have been put on all over the place. And more to come from him, and I can't wait.
So yes,
awesome.
Kui, thank you. So glad you could join us again.
Yeah,
excited to be here.
So that's great. So Kui, of course, Kui and Therese are both Asian American, like I am, and we all come from different backgrounds. I'm Filipino, Kui's Vietnamese, and then of course Therese is from Chinese background, and so we're excited to have Heidi join us to talk about Asian American Heritage Month. We're going to celebrate Asian Americans in TV and film, either by, starring, or about Asian Americans. So it's going to be a wide swath of things. You're going to be, how does that? Well, because they were in it. Okay, I see.
I'm just here to listen and learn. So
got a whole list.
Oh, I know.
I
you did your homework.
We'll have a
lot.
lot.
I did not.
Well,
I did not.
That's all right.
I will jump off with one. I want to spotlight one person here, and I'm actually even gonna let's see if I can share my screen. I wanted to talk just a little tribute to Jack Sue, who was in Barney Miller, and
what a great old picture of him.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah, and he was also in the internment camps, and I'm totally
just like George
sharing.
Takei was,
yeah, it's just like George Takei. He was born on a boat, and he was asked to use a Chinese last name because they didn't want him to appear as Japanese. But anyway, he was Detective Yamana on Barney Miller, and one of the few first Asian characters on TV who really was a really great character. He was so talented and just hilarious. I mean, I love Barney Miller, so I've been rewatching them, and I was like, let's remember Jack Sue because he was definitely a true pioneer.
For sure. I think mostly we're going to cover a lot of more modern stuff, but we got to give props to like Anime Wong. I mean, I remember the first person we just mentioned it. First person I remember seeing as a kid was George Takei on Star Trek, and I was like, oh my God. That dude's Asian. Look at that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, he does have a shirt on. He has a sword. This is awesome. I love
it. Anyone wants to feel really depressed and sad, you should watch The Terror season 2. That was
absolutely.
I attended the press conference for that at San Diego Comic-Con and cried during it. Afterwards, I was talking to George and I was like, I'm sorry I started crying. And he was like, it's okay.
Well, no, I feel it because I went to the same press conference for that. And it's a really great show. Season 2, that was one of my picks is to talk about the Terror Infamy. It's set in the Japanese or the American internment camps of the Japanese people. And it's a great story, but there's a horror element to it. But yeah, I actually had set up an interview with him at Comic-Con that year. So after the press conference, they were sort of mingling about. We got to say hi. I go, hey, George, I'm Jimmy. We're actually interviewing tomorrow. And he's like, great to meet you. It's a great voice, And,
he's the most delightful man.
Yeah.
And then give me a hug. I felt so loved.
Yeah.
So lovely.
Great. Like the next day I did the interview and it was actually at the Hotel Coronado, which is on Coronado Island. You go out there.
So far away.
Which is great. But it was like nice little, because it was away from everyone. And I had such a Star Trek day because I actually was there early and they had like little shops downstairs. And I went into like this men's shop just to kill time because I'm always looking for a new tie, And I hear this voice and it's this British accent, wear the belt, and it's Patrick Stewart. I'm like, well, this is a good sign. A good sign to start my day. And then I go to talk to George and we talked for probably 10 or 15 minutes off mic and then another 20 just delightful. And when he told him I was Filipino. He goes, and something I didn't know. He goes, did you know that Sulu was named after a body of water in the Philippines, the Sulu Sea? And I was like, I had no idea.
Oh,
wow. Like,
wow.
holy cow. Yeah. So there's a Sulu Sea.
Man is a font of wisdom.
Yeah. And it was the same thing. When I left the interview, I went and sat on a bench and I started crying because I was so moved. I'd met one of my true heroes. And I remember the publicist on me, because, you okay, buddy? I'm like, thank you so much for setting that up. I was like, I was so moved. He's so delightful and so sweet, and a pioneer, like, not just obviously for TV for us, being on Star Trek and many things since then, but a pioneer just, in politics and for gay rights and Asian rights and everything. It's just such an incredible legend. So yeah, we definitely got to give props to George for sure. And joining us now is George Takei. Hey, George.
Oh my God, I would die.
Oh my. Hello.
I know.
He's the best. He's the best. Yeah, we got lots of definitely ones who paved the way, but we do have plenty of modern stuff, thankfully, to talk about, and it is getting a little better. And as we know, for years and even still now, it's been terrible. Where lots of yellow face, especially back in the day, they all did. I mean, everyone loves Breakfast at Tiffany's, but me, because it's like, are you fucking kidding me with that? Mickey Rooney, and then John Wayne did it, Katharine Hepburn, all the big name. I mean, Charlie Chan was one of the most popular movie series, and it was a white dude playing it in yellowface, and it's like, yeah, it's tough, and it's like I said, gotten a lot better over the years, but it still unfortunately kind of happens off and on. But there is lots of great modern things out there for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so I'm at my parents' right now, and in Maine, and with my stepfather, whose office I'm in, actually. I mean, he actually wrote for Bernie Miller. That's more of my
nice.
Bernie Miller
Oh,
connection.
cool.
Oh, there you go.
Just to explain the whole thing, but it's pretty much nothing but AMC or Turner Movie Classics here,
yeah.
nonstop. Okay,
Nice.
so I've been catching up on a lot of Fred Astaire movies. But yes, well, I will say that Around the World in 80 Days was on yesterday. And,
wow.
Talk about Orientalism and all of those things that were so prevalent in films of the time. And I mean, I grew up, everything I consumed was colonialist in nature. From Dr. Dolittle, Oz, everything was about colonialism. And it's
still kind of is a little,
and it still is, but at least we have a few more voices. But one of the things we have been doing, I mean, I'll just kick this off because I was able to see it this week. Was because my stepdad's a film writer, he gets all the screeners and all that. So normally I come up for Christmas and we watch all of the DVDs of all the nominated movies. And, that's our Christmas tradition. That didn't happen this year, but we still had a couple of movies to watch. So we did watch Minari, which I had not seen.
Wonderful film.
Which is a wonderful film. So I will say this, all of us were it was so stressful to watch this movie, though, I will say, because you just knew, like from the first scene, I think that was the whole point. It's like this family is under such pressure and everything is so tenuous in their lives. And, every time something happened, we were like, oh no. I was like, like, oh, there's a snake. Is the snake going to bite the kid?
Oh, no.
Like the stress of this movie, it was like a suspense thriller for all of us. But, and, spoilers as we do on the show. And then when, grandma is,
oh God,
like, I'm gonna burn the garbage, and we're all like, no, oh no.
Yoon Jung, who won the Oscar and won every award, as she well deserved, was a tour de force in that movie.
Yeah, but I mean, she's invested.
She's Korean grandma. She's in every drama.
She's a legend in Korea.
When I saw her, I watched that movie at Sundance, and this is a little less than about Sundance Film Festival. Everything is depressing there. It's never a happy, cheery movie, especially this past, like this January. I was watching movies and I was like, I watched like 36 movies in like 4 days or something like that. Nice. But I was emotionally exhausted. I watched one where I just sat there and cried, and I was like, I'm supposed to be watching another one right now, but I don't think I can do it. This Minari, oh my God. I mean, the tears down my face watching that movie. It was my favorite movie of 2020. 2020 when it came out at Sundance. Absolutely.
I only saw it a few months ago, I ran it online because I was just like, oh man, I got to see this film. And what was great, because of course we heard about it with the Golden Globes, the controversy where they made it a foreign film. It's like, are you what? It's like it's an American film. It's an
It's
American.
set in Arkansas.
Yeah. It's just 90% in Korean, but it's like it's Lee Isaac Chung, the director, right? It's like it's loosely based a little bit on his own life. He's basically the little boy in a sense, and he it's a complete American immigration story, and it's like,
but also like Welcome to America. A lot of people who are immigrants only speak their. I mean, when I talk to my parents, I only speak Mandarin. Like I don't.
Oh, really?
I will slip into English, but like even my dad, he's been in the country for like 30 plus years. Like his English is not that great because he's always worked around other Chinese people. He used to work at in the restaurant business. So like, I mean, if I were to do a movie about my life, it would basically all be subtitles too. Like my parents, I wouldn't hire actors who speak like perfect English to play my parents. I like wouldn't even. My parents couldn't watch the movie. Like they wouldn't understand it.
Yeah, mine would be subtitled too, just because the Filipino accent is so strong.
I don't think I could even do the movie because I actually am an Asian family that grew up in Arkansas. It would be pretty much the scenario all over. Yeah. And a lot of the things are very similar. I grew up with my grandmother there, and we owned a diner, and I think that the same fear that you're like, there's always going to be a racist murder right around every corner, and you're just like, oh, that was pretty much the life, And
what part of Arkansas?
South Arkansas, so it's a little bit of a different region. And my parents weren't farmers or anything like that. I mean, we did for a moment. My parents, because they were farmers in Vietnam, decided, hey, just to prove that we still are in touch with nature, we're going to raise some chickens and then kill them and eat them to prove that we still have that in us. And then my mom, and this was like, I was 8 or something, so she was in the country for like 9 years. We had bought chicks, raised them for like 2 or 3 weeks. I was like, are we going to eat them? And my mom was like, no, why would you say that? Like, whoa, you grew real soft, Mom.
Oh my God, that would not be my dad. He would 100% be like, let's raise some chickens. And
this movie must have been. So what was your first thoughts when you saw it though? I mean, it's so close to home for you.
Oh, I mean, literally. I'm always super excited. I mean, like the thing that like, to be honest, the first time it got on my radar was when the controversy happened, like about the foreign film, and it's always been for me a thing that I've thought about a lot. The fact that like when people think of the all-American story, they only think of certain characters that look a certain way, and for me, it was always like, but this is the American story. This is literally like what people coming from somewhere else to come here to better their lives and to make it through that struggle to finally find a way to kind of sew their story into the American fabric. That is the all-American story, and that's always felt like I don't know of a story more American than Minari, honestly.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was like, it really bugs me, just like it bugged everyone else when it kind of got pushed over. And when you're like, oh, but it was in a different language. There's a language that he's like, no, but that's trying to say that the American language is just European. It's just, and that's always the thing that I think bugs all of us. And so it was good that that we're all talking about it right now, and that's a thing, because it's it makes being a creator in this business not super fun, sometimes, because like the stories people want to hear still has to do with a lot with exoticism. They still want you to tell you the exotic version of your story. I always said that like Hollywood, and I love, obviously it pays my bills and takes care of me. So I'm not that critical enough. I am critical as an artist though, that Hollywood has a really bad habit of celebrating Asian stories in the sense that they're very comfortable celebrating us of where we came from, but not where we're at or where we're going. Yeah. So you can see like a shit ton of movies about us in our quote unquote home countries and acting like we were hundreds of years ago. We can do kung fu. We can, struggle, in ancient lands. But the moment you're like, I just want to tell a story about my actual upbringing. I was born and raised in Arkansas, grew up in primarily an African-American neighborhood. I I for a long time actually thought I was a light-skinned Black person.
Wow.
For like till I was like 13 or 14, till my white teachers were finally like, I don't think you're Black. I was like, wait, what? But I grew up in this neighborhood. I speak like my friends. I'm culturally this thing. They're like, no, I think you're something else. And my very sweet but simple-minded, Arkansas teachers didn't actually have language for it in 1980 something. And so like that's part of the story that I'm like, I never get to see that. I long for more Harold and Kumars and more Crazy Rich Asians and stories of that ilk. And though I love the Mortal Kombats and the Shang-Chi's and those flicks, I always think if you took that kind of racial view and flipped it on its head, and you're like, imagine as white people, the only stories you're allowed to see are stories of your past. So basically, we all get Shang-Chi's and we get Black Panthers and we get like Asian Avengers, but you only get Shakespeare. That's all you get. And the only time you get to see someone fight, they don't get to fly and have super strength and shoot laser beams out of their eyes like Superman. What they get to do is fence. That's all you get to do, fence. And occasionally, when you do get to fight unarmed, you'll have to fight like this. Why can't I punch like this? And so because the Spanish were the ones who invented this when they went to the Philippines and were influenced by our knees. Because when the Spanish tried to fight the Filipinos like this and the Filipinos fought like this, they got their asses kicked. So they brought it back to European boxing and evolved it. So without that influence, you don't get to punch like an MMA fighter. You punch kind of stupid. So now the only thing white people are now allowed to do is speak in Shakespeare, fight fencing with fencing poles, or punch like doofuses. That's the only characters you ever get to see. If you can explain it that way, I think white people suddenly go, that's fucking ridiculous. It's like, well, it is fucking ridiculous, but that's what you put on all Asian Americans. Yeah. That's the only stories we ever get to see. So it'd be really nice. Again, I'm super supportive of Warriors. I'm super supportive of Kung Fu. I'm always for more Asian actors getting jobs. And I love that those shows are primary Asian cast. I love that they're Asian heroes. I want those stories to be out there. I want them to be working, but I would really love to see some Asian rom-coms and Asian like legal dramas and Asian like just boring ass shit where just an Asian family sitting around talking about their feelings like this is us. Like I want some of that shit. I want some of that.
Absolutely.
Because we go through that stuff too. Anyways, that's my
well. Two notes on that. Also, so Kui is also a fight expert and studying fight spirits, so he knows his fight choreography well. And also, this is why Magellan again sailed around the world, so he got to the Philippines. You know what I'm saying? And they killed him. So because he was trying to fight like that. The Filipinos were like, this is gonna be easy.
This is gonna be real fun.
We got this one. I totally agree. I've been saying that forever too. And we've talked about this in the past. Queen and I have had many discussions over the years about this, how we grew up, and that was just the norm. And myself didn't question it, even as an actor, when I would be in Casting the King and I. And there's 5 of us that are Asian. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I think that's kind of weird, but whatever. I guess that's all we have here. And then as it kept happening, I started noticing more and more, and especially as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh, that's not cool. That's not good. And we have to do sort of what we say is retrain our brains to what we were used to, especially, growing up in like the 80s and especially before that. Where it was just the norm. Like every lead was a white dude, and not even a white lady. It was usually a dude, of course, as always. And it's like, we need to retrain our brains on that side as well. But I do think it's interesting also on Kui's point about, exoticism. And you probably know this better than I do, Kui. I feel like I remember, because as a young actor, I devoured plays, reading them. And I always would order from Fireside Theater Library and order the plays. And I remember first getting David Henry Hwang, who is a friend of Kui's, who I knows in Butterfly. And I believe it was in his foreword where he talked about the word Oriental, where he talked about why it's offensive, what it means, what it brings up the ideas of mysticism, exoticism, bound feet, servitude. And that really stuck with me over the years. So I was like, oh, because I was using the word Oriental as a kid, and
my parents do too.
Yeah, my parents still do too.
All the time.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like, it's an object. Like there can be an Oriental rug. There's an Oriental lamp, but there's not an Oriental person. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. It's like, and that's, Huang certainly explained it much better than I am right now, but it really stuck with me over the years.
Well, I think like on the note of, like, since we're talking about like film and television and things
Mhm.
like that, I did not grow up in the 80s. I was born in 1992.
We know you're the
So
baby of the group. We know, Therese.
I feel special when
So
I'm with you
young and
guys.
so
Everybody else is
vibrant.
younger than me.
She has
right?
so much ahead of her. Look at her. She's
But
the
like,
future.
I grew up, my mom like used to introduce me to a lot of like film from Hong Kong. So I feel like my perspective, whenever I think about shows, that we have in Hollywood today, I kind of see the inspiration that they draw from movies and, stories from Hong Kong cinema, especially. I feel like a lot of people pull from that, but they kind of, I feel like it hasn't gotten to the point where you kind of feel the soul of it. Like one of my favorite movies is a movie by the director Zhang Yimou, and it's called Hero. It has Jet Li
Yeah.
starring in it.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Maggie
incredible.
Chung, Donnie Yen,
Amazing.
and Tony Lung. I call him, I get him confused. There's another Tony Lung
Right.
in Hong Kong cinema, in case people don't know. But this is Liang Taowei is what I would call him in Mandarin. But it's like one of my favorite movies. And I like, up until the point that I saw that movie, I thought a lot of like wuxia movies were just, like people fighting, not a real plot. But that, if anybody has ever seen that movie, it is the wildest plot you will ever watch. Like there's like 17 stories. It's like flashes
and
back
the
like 10
wonderful
times.
Zhang Ji. Oh, I love her.
Oh my God. Well, there's like
amazing.
A great, like the part, like the soul of that story is like kind of grounded in a lot of Chinese philosophy and like Eastern philosophy. And also in the idea of like, bringing China together as a country. It's set, in the very, very early, like the very first, before the first dynasty of China. And it's like movies like that where like I can continue going back to it. I've seen that movie like hundreds of times. I can like keep going back to it and like learning about it. And I feel like stories in Hollywood that want to touch on that, like, that Orientalism and like that, the glamour of that, don't really touch on like the philosophy, because that's a big part of like a lot of Asian stories, especially the ones made in Asia, is about like the philosophies that we have, like that they don't really, it's hard to explain that to somebody in a movie, but it's like watching it with my mom, she would like have to pause and be like, okay, well, this is this and like this is that, and like, my mom loves to lecture me, so it's
nice.
The first watch of that movie did not, took a lot more time than the runtime of the movie. But that's like, same thing with like Hong Kong, like mob cinema. Internal Affairs, like before The Departed ever became a thing, like that was the original Departed, and it's way better and way shorter. And there's no creepy Jack Nicholson. I'm sorry to the Jack Nicholson fans. He's always been kind of gross to me.
Taste,
also
kid.
really hot actors. Like, what a fantastic movie. Andy Lau again, Tony Leung. Like, I'm a big fan of Tony Leung.
Yeah, we're noticing
wait,
that.
is this the Tony Leung that's in?
Yeah, it's gonna be the Mandarin.
The Shang, right? Okay, but the action, that's like action.
Had a crush on him for years.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I was gonna mention it because we just talked about Minari, what a great immigration and family story it is. It's another film I just watched last night, and it came out last year by Alan Yang, called Tigertail. And if you ever heard it, it's Alan Yang. Mostly he's done some TV. He worked with Aziz Ansari on his series a lot, and he's directed like videos like that. But it's his first one he wrote and directed, and it stars, of course, the wonderful Chima, who is in everything now. He's in Kung Fu right now. He's always the dad. He's the dad of Mulan.
He's the
dad
dad
and everything. He's great. But it's a generational story of the same person, of him as a little kid, growing up in Taiwan, and then him as like a young 20-something meeting the love of his life, but then having to leave her to move to America. It's another immigration story. And then him older, reflecting back on it. So it follows him. You see him as a young kid, escaping to live with his grandparents because his parents were wanted, or dad was like that by the new government and the new Chinese government. And then when he's older, he's living with his mom. They both work in a factory in Taiwan. And, he meets a girl he loves, and they really they're for each other. But then the factory, he wants to go to America. And the factory is like, well, I have a daughter and I would like you to take her and marry her. So he takes him up on that, leaves his true love, and moves to America. And it's just great. What he was just talking about. It's just, they moved to the city, and they're super poor. They live in this tiny little, 1 bedroom a hole in the wall in this bad neighborhood. He starts working at a deli and starts managing it, and meanwhile she stays at home. She finds a friend at the laundromat who's from Taiwan, an older lady. They become friends, but it's watching their tumultuous relationship because they really didn't know each other, but they wanted to both move to America and live the dream. And that's the idea of a good immigration story, is that like, oh, they moved to America to better themselves and make more money. And he succeeded. They end up having a couple kids, but you see them older. Their relationship became very strained because again, they never were really meant for each other, even though they stayed married for many, many years. And when he's older, the daughter struggles as well, and visiting back home. It was a very moving tale, and I may have wept a couple times, but it's really great. It's on Netflix.
And what was it called again?
Tigertail.
Tigertail. Yeah,
Tigertail. Yeah.
Right, I'm going to put the
It's great.
reading
Alan
guide
Yang,
in the comments of the
Joan Chen has a role in it later on. She appears later in the film as an older version of the lover character. It's a great cast, and it's really well done. I highly recommend it.
I think my recent recommendation is something, this feels like an easy grab because I just worked with her on Raya, but like Nora from Queens.
I love Nora from Queens. Yes.
And I mean, of course, Aquafina is great, and it's fun to watch all the hijinks that she does.
Hilarious.
But there's also just great performances, particularly from one actress, Lori Tanchin, who plays her grandmother. She's amazing.
She's awesome.
My friend Deborah Craig's in it. She's hysterical. Dumbfounded is in it as like the dumb friend.
Oh my God,
it's just like
Bowen Yang is in it.
It's just like there's all these great performances out. I mean, it's great that you get to see the celebrity of Aquafina, but also highlighting all these amazing. I mean, BD Wong's already a big name, so I don't know if he needs more spotlight. But the rest of all those other talent that's around it, it's just incredible to see. And it's like, oh, look at all this great Asian comedy and comedic talents that show gets to highlight. And so I'm a huge fan, and she's wonderful.
That was on my list. Yeah, I love that show. She's so funny. Like she has such the cadence of her voice is just funny hearing her talk sometimes because the way she speaks is really, really funny. But I love that show. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, just to touch on TV shows. Also, I feel like I've been mentioning a lot of East Asian things, like topics, but I really, really like Never Have I Ever, which stars
I haven't seen it.
Primarily Indian cast.
Yeah, I really want to see that.
The young actress, like the lead, Maitrey Ramakrishnan, is like so charismatic. She's so adorable. I mean, it's like a teenage like rom-com, but it's so freaking cute. Like it's so, and there is like a story about like a family, like her parents are immigrants, and I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a really sad, tragic story that she has been struggling with, like personally. And she's a teenager. So it's kind of like, it's during a tough time in her life, and it's all done through like comedy. I think it was written or produced by Mindy Kaling. But it's an absolutely, if you like teen, like rom-coms, like that type of genre, I think it's a great movie. It's a great show to watch, and it's on Netflix. I think there's only it's got 10 episodes or something like that. But on the same note, more teen rom-coms for the people out there who are interested is no, I'm not going to say. I was also going to suggest Shadow and Bone, which is not a rom-com, but watch Shadow and Bone. Yeah. But Dash and Lily is like a holiday.
Oh yeah, I've heard. I haven't seen it, but yeah,
I just rewatched it last night. So nice. It's the main actress in it, Midori Francis, I think is her name, is she's Hapa. She's half Japanese, and it's also a freaking adorable little story. Highly recommend those.
I thought you were gonna say To All the Boys I Loved Before.
Oh my God!
Right.
That series is fantastic. Before. Like it's a whole series. Lana Condor is going to conquer the world. I'm here for it. She's fantastic. What a great series. And again, like it's sort of like what Q was talking about. It's yes, she's Asian, but that's not what the story's about. It's just a story about her falling in love and meeting the guy she likes. And it's a whole series, and then the trials and tribulations of young love. And it's really.
Can I just say
great.
that I know you're a K-pop fan, which is why I thought it was hilarious in the third movie. They opened up in Korea and they played a song from like literally 10 years ago, I think. The G song by Girls' Generation.
Yeah.
I remember dancing to that song in high school, and I was like, who's on their like music department? Like,
I know, right?
These very dated songs.
Yeah.
Like, I guess it's a hit.
That is still a bop. Come on, G is still good.
But like, I was like, wow, from the plethora to choose from right now to go
right?
with Girls' Generation.
Can I go with maybe they couldn't get the money, but they could afford Blackpink and BTS. But yeah. But that's
on the rom-com trip, I would still. I mean, this is a movie that's been out for a few years now, and but I'm such a big fan of The Big Stick. Like that, talk about
my god,
just an incredible love story. It's about something that's very real, and it's just like it and it still does like directly talk about what it's like to be Asian in America, right? Like dealing with like that like I grew up and my parents' expectation was for me to be with someone who's Vietnamese. Like that was just it, they weren't quite at the point where they were trying to hook me up with folks because I lived in Arkansas and there wasn't a lot of options.
Right.
So it wasn't like you would knock at the door, it's like, hello, meet the local Vietnamese girl. But I remember that just kind of expectation coming from them. I was like, that's very, very real. But then to just see that simple like story of someone being in love with someone, not kind of realizing until they're super sick, and knowing that was actually Kumail's actual love story is just incredible to see. And to it feels like, oh, this feels so human and not exoticized in any way. It's just a very touching story. And you get to see Kumail before he's been all super swole for the Eternals.
Right,
Homie's like so big now.
Another great
looking good now.
I wonder how that happened.
Steroids.
But, it's just the way the Marvel does it. You get cast in Marvel. You get
they
just
inject
them right out.
High protein diet. Yeah. How it happens. Another great, a lot of working out.
Another great rom-com, Always Be My Maybe, which was Randall Park and Ali Wong, and it's like again just a story
and Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves, amazing.
Who is a quarter Asian, absolutely, but yeah, it's like this great film again, has nothing to do with their ethnicity does come into play with like family moments, things like that, but really it's just like these two people who come back together in each other's lives and and fall back in love, and it's really, and of course they're both hilarious. Randall and Ali are and Ali Wong, we've seen her great stand-up, but I've never really seen her act. She was fantastic in it. And Randall, we all know because he's in everything, all the time. And just a fun, really heartwarming movie. And
but seeing Randall as like a romantic lead was amazing. I mean, we know him, but he's mostly in comedy. And at that point, I think he'd only been really like prominently shown in
Fresh Off the Boat.
Yeah, Fresh Off the Boat.
Yeah,
as like like a dad. So like it was cool to see him.
Which is another show based on, of course, Eddie Wong, the well-known chef. Based on his life, even though he sort of railed against it after it started coming out. But it's like I still think it was great because again it showcases another great Asian American story of this family who decided to move to Orlando, and opens up a restaurant, and and the three kids and the mom, and this is Constance Wu's breakout role, of course, and
the grandma.
She's fantastic. Yeah, the grandma. Oh my gosh,
always gotta have a grandma.
Always gotta have a great grandma.
Mama.
Sure. Oh yeah, and she's fantastic. They all. It's really great seeing them, and I was reading some interesting why they like, why did the mom speak in an accent but not the dad? And a lot of it came down to Randall was like, I just can't do the accent very well. So he felt like he was the one that was more into being in America and more Americanized. So he picked it up quicker to lose, like he wanted to lose his accent was his background story to the whole thing. I'm like, I'll buy it. That's fine. Sure. Why not? Because Constance is fantastic. And it really is part of her character to have that accent. Because as you guys said, our parents, like my dad, his parents have those accents. So yeah, for sure. But it was.
I think another movie also that came out quite recent within the last couple of years, is The Farewell, which also has Awkwafina.
So good.
And one of my favorite roles of hers. I think her comedy is really good, but it's kind of like this was like a very good, And again, I think Tai Ma was in it. He's also the dad in that. Dad figure.
I apologize saying his name wrong. I was saying his name wrong.
I've been saying his name wrong too. Believe it or not. I asked my mom how to pronounce his name, and she was like, "Yeah, that's just how Cantonese romanization works, because I was definitely, I mean, you don't want to know how I was pronouncing it, but I was like, I've been wrong this whole time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, Farewell is fantastic, and it's like it is like she's an American, she lives in America, but she goes back because her grandmother's sick, and it's this really great story of like the traditions that you find within Asian families, and the respect they have for the elders.
Oh my
god, it's so good. But
when she's talking about crab versus lobster, I started laughing so hard. I was like, wow, this is a literal conversation I've seen in my family, like about weddings, like.
That's hilarious.
And how many courses you got to have to like make sure you got to have the soup, and like you have to have like, oh man.
Well, what I loved about it also was the fact that, like, you know, it was a great acting role for Awkwafina, but it was also just a rarity that I think people didn't point out was the fact that it was a great movie to see Asian affection. You know, because often, like, when you think about Asian stories, it's always like cold parents and, you know, overbearing tiger moms and all that. And these weren't America, I can't even say the word. They were like not super westernized, like Asians. It wasn't a westernized Asian story, right? Like they weren't running around saying, I love you and high fiving and fist bumping. They were very much like an Asian family, but they showed their love by like, they didn't want to tell grandma that she's dying, and they would leave and quietly cry in the other room because they fucking loved her. You know, Awkwafina wanted to hug her and just needed to stay by her. They cared about each other eating constantly because Asians show love by asking you if you've eaten already, right? Like that's
is a big Asian in any Asian culture. Like it's like I would walk in the door of my Filipino friend's houses, and the rice cooker just turns on because it's like oh eat Jim. I'm like okay eat like
turn on.
Yeah. Well, no, sorry.
On.
It's been on. It's been on since that morning. You're right. Yeah, sorry. You're correct.
It's always warning.
You are correct. I was going for the audio joke, but there's no audio there. But yeah.
Well, you know, another like movie that of course everyone. Groundbreaking is Crazy Rich Asians, which absolutely. So many of the people that we've mentioned were in. I will say,
Awkwafina, my God,
and
Henry Golding,
and British Asian on Jimmy Chan, British Asian, of course, yes, absolutely, yeah.
But we were watching again, you know, just to put this in my parents' reference. It's like we had a little, like I was explaining to them, you know, that we were going to do the show, and you know that Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle was the first movie that ever starred an Asian American lead. And my stepfather says, like, everyone, what about Jackie Chan? Like, he's Chinese.
Yeah, Asian American. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, you know, so we had actually had a great dialogue about it. And, but yes, we were going through all the latest movies because, like I said, it's Turner Movie Classics all the way down here. And so we were going through recent movies, and I was holding up the DVDs, like say, what about this? Didn't you like this? And then the first one I came to that we were like, oh, we all love that movie was Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah.
So because it's such a great movie.
That's the thing. It's another thing on you guys' point is that it's a rom-com.
Yeah.
It happens to be about Asians and families and love, and it starts off in America where they live, where you know the Rachel character, which is Constance Wu's character, you know, is a lawyer or studying law and like that, and Henry Golding's character's from this super duper crazy rich, you know, Malaysian, I believe, the family, and are they Malaysian? Yeah, I think they're Malaysian. And
they're from Singapore.
Singapore, okay, yeah. And it's just like you get to meet all the characters, and just watching it's a love story, and it's great, and
also the terror of the mother-in-law.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. But that thing you see the respect, but there's also
was she a
fear.
Terror, or was she kind of right? Like,
exactly.
Sometimes she says some things, and I'm like, well,
the
it is a lot to enter into that world.
Your grandmother, but then you know you have like the great Michelle Yeoh, my God, who's just like incredible in it. But what really, I mean, I definitely, again, another film I definitely teared up in, but
I think that like that movie kind of brought to the forefront, you know, like the actual reality that there are a lot of crazy rich Asians. Like I have a member of my family who is like crazy rich. I mean, he's not that rich, but he does own like multiple houses and like an estate on like Mallorca. So he's up there. And I
get his info
before that movie. I don't think like, and like now there's Bling Empire, obviously, which is like a reality TV show. But like before that, I feel like people didn't talk about, I mean, unless you're in the business world, people didn't really talk about, like how like crazy rich some people are. And that, I mean, in that movie, like they're like old money, but like a lot of, I mean, Aquafina's character is like kind of an example of like they're like more new money, like nouveau riche. That's like a lot of people in Asia right now. Like that covers, I would say, like a very wide swath of people, especially people who are coming into this country now and bringing their kids to, like have an education in America or, in other Western countries, which is, I mean, I have thoughts about that, but we don't need to go into it. But it's an interesting, like, because I remember when it first came out, people were talking about it, and I was like, it's not fantasy. It's not that fantastic. Like, truly, it's not as fantastic as you think it is, because there are people who live like this, like regularly. Like the one cousin, the one like family member, I think he's played by Ronnie Chang. His family is like, they're all like taking pictures, and it's like very bougie. I was like, oh yeah. Yeah. I know exact.
And that like wedding where like the water comes up, you're like, oh, this is amazing.
Oh my god,
wedding scene is beautiful. And like,
what is their down payment on that church that they can like that they're
like, who was pumping that water in and had to clean that up? I want to know, but yeah, that scene was very moving for many reasons, but also because the princess is Chris Aquino, who is, very well-known Filipino figure. Her dad was the late assassinated political leader Benigno Aquino. His wife started the movement, the Power of the People movement. Corazon Aquino, who became president of the Philippines back when I was growing up, and one of her brother was the president of the Philippines at one point. But she's been an actress in entertainment for years. And so when I saw her, I was with, my date was this cute little white girl, and I was like, "That's Chris Aquino." She's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be fine." I was like so moved. But just it was just such a touching and fun and really funny movie, and had several Asian Americans in it, which was great. And we soon might be set up for the sequel. We got another one in there, Harry Shum, maybe to get the sequel made. So yeah.
Oh, really Harry Shum.
Yeah.
Gotta love him.
Supposed to star him and Gemma Chan. I think it's stars in the next one. We'll see.
I love Gemma Chan.
God,
awesome, right?
So, yeah, I did the press room for Humans. Then she's doing that great show, Humans, where she played like an AI.
Mm-hmm. She played like an android.
Yeah, and she's for people who know, she's British Asian, and she's incredible, and like
I think people are gonna know who she is for sure very soon. When Eternals drops, we're all gonna know.
Do people not know her now?
They should know.
Yeah, I'm assuming everyone knows who she is now, but but she's about to be like, little kids are gonna know who she is.
Yeah,
which is always gonna be the big thing, right? Like, we love all these characters, but as soon as you do a Marvel movie, like my son knows who all who all these characters. Exactly. He's 8. He gives no crap about Hollywood. He's just like, but look, Captain America, Chris Evans. You're like, right. Marvel is a great equalizer.
That's true. Did you guys see? I haven't watched it yet, but I keep meaning to rent it. Well, they had like the first 9 minutes on YouTube. I watched that. Yellow Rose. Have you heard of this? It's stars Eve Noblezada and Lea Salonga. Of course, Lea Salonga, the very him and Miss Saigon. Eve she's in Hadestown, or was in Hadestown, and also was Kim in the remake of Saigon. And they play mother-daughter, and it's set in Texas, and they're both Filipino in real life.
Ooh, that was
Texas.
Good.
Yeah, they're set in Texas. Then Eve wants to become a country singer. But then there's an immigration thing involved, with her mom and all this other stuff. But yeah, it looks like the first 5 minutes, I was like, oh, I need to rent this right away. I watched it and I just didn't have time to watch it yet. But it looks fantastic. Another great American story starring Asian Americans.
Yeah, it says it came out last year.
Yeah.
How have I not seen it yet?
I know. I
that's
missed
gonna be first on my list.
Yeah.
Well, in 2019, so the year before.
Yeah, God, it's 2021.
But the before times.
Yeah. We don't count 2020.
I don't even know what that was.
What was that? Yeah. So that looks really great. I didn't see that, but another one I watched, which was an interesting sort of thing, where you have the farewell, and Crazy Rich Asians took the Americans into back sort of their ancestry. It's another one I just watched. It's called Soul Searching. Soul as in the city. Came out in 2015, and it's loosely based on the writer-director Benson Lee's story. So apparently, there's a mass immigration of Koreans to America for quite a while. But then their kids were being raised and not knowing anything about their culture. So similar to other countries, Korea's government decided to start this program. Hey, come back for a summer. We'll pay for it. Put you up in a school. You'll learn about Korean culture. You'll hang out. You'll play. Have a good time. So it's all these Korean kids from around the world come together. There's and it's really funny, but oh my, does it hit you at the end with some really powerful movie moments, because it starts off, it's sort of like, and they even have a poster where it's sort of Breakfast Clubby, so it's like Breakfast Club meets oh god, I don't know, but something else. But so you get this kid from America who, it's set in 1985 too, so, or 86, kid from America who thinks his name's Six, he likes Sid Vicious, he dresses all punk. And then another kid from America who like loves Madonna, so she's dressed all Madonna'd out. Then 3 guys who love Run DMC who dress like Run DMC, and then a Korean kid from Germany, another one from Mexico who's actually a real Spanish actor who's of Korean descent, and he's sort of the comic relief of the group. And but there's there's even one Korean kid who's in the military in Virginia who is just a dick because he feels he has, because he, and then they talk about their backgrounds. You slowly find out the veneer starts coming off of like why they act a certain way. Well, because my dad beat me because I wasn't the perfect Korean kid. I didn't know our culture, or family did this or that happened. And so they really, there's a lot of great comical moments, but like there's a really great story of a Korean girl adopted, who she's been adopted by 2 white parents, and she finds her real mom while she's there, and it's like, oh my god, the freaking tears flow in that scene, because the mom had to give her up for many reasons. The father was abusive, and she's remarried to another kid. She can't tell her them about her other daughter. And there's this great scene because the American kid doesn't speak any Korean, so she first brings the one friend to translate for her, but then the second scene they have together, it's her talking. She's like, I know you don't understand me, but I have to get this out. And it's this moving scene. The mom starts crying, and talking to her daughter, and then she's like, "Oh ma," to her mom. It's like, it's so moving. You're like, I don't know what you're saying, but it's it's like, it's so touching, but it's also very, very funny. So it's uneven. There's some moments where you're like, but for the most part, I really enjoy. Yeah, there's definitely something like, okay, but it's for the most part, it's like one of those 3 out of 4 type star things. But it's called Soul Searchers on Netflix. So that was a really interesting thing, seeing Americans going back to where their their quote unquote homelands, to see.
Well, it's kind of like the current show right now, Kung Fu. The main character, she goes back to China for like 3 years, I think, which I thought was really cool, because I talked to the actress about it, Olivia Leong, and I was like, oh, it's so interesting as like a Chinese American to think about going back to the quote unquote motherland, and kind of like, it's already kind of a struggle, I think, especially for mixed race people, to like kind of find an identity. But I feel like when, even like as like a full like Chinese American, going back to China is like kind of a culture shock, and being like, oh, well, I've always identified myself as Chinese, but then I go back there and it's like, oh, I don't really know the slang. I can speak Mandarin, but I don't really speak it perfectly, and I don't know every word. And there's a lot of cultural things I don't understand. Like the reality is that I am kind of whitewashed, and it's kind of weird because I'm so proud of being Chinese in America, but like oftentimes that's
would
kind
you
of,
fit in
especially
back there? Yeah.
Well, especially like today being Chinese, like I feel like there's kind of like a stigma against it, not only because of COVID, but also because of how Chinese and American relations can be. Like it's not all great, and it's kind of it's like, it's very interesting to think about that. And I don't know, it's a good show. I really love Kung Fu.
I do too.
I love that Tama is like playing like a very affectionate father. Like he's not playing, this like, like gruff, like doesn't feel anything, like, very like
stereotypical
I love you,
dad.
It's like, it feels very much like my dad is a lot like his, like that character. Like he's very like affectionate, very like kind of, he's a soft one. So yeah. But on that note, I also would like to say that there are some shows that I wrote down last night that do not involve a lot of like Asian culture, but do star Asian actors. I used to watch Nikita, which has Maggie Q.
God, Maggie Q.
One of my favorite shows.
Absolutely.
That show is wild. It has
had the best
so many
fight
stories.
choreography on for years. Had the best fight choreography on there. Yeah.
There's Elementary, which is
Lucy. Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
There's the short-lived but much loved by me Selfie with John.
I have that on my list too. Yeah, I love that. That show was so good, and it was unfortunately it was a terrible title, but it was a really good show. Oh yeah, Selfie for sure.
I also would like to promote like those people behind the camera that obviously don't often, like, just because you got to celebrate them too, like Chloe Zhao, Nomadland, right?
Oh God,
you got
yes.
Hiro Murai with Atlanta, and then you have like Justin Lin's and the James Wans and the Destin Cretton that are doing all this stuff,
John
in those
Chu,
high
Lulu Wang, we
level,
mentioned,
those big level jobs. That the more you have those folks, that are producing and directing and writing these things, the more opportunities we're going to see, more authentic stories out there.
Yes.
And also just give opportunity for them to be able to do different things. But I will, just because Therese said about, I feel whitewashed. And I try to never say that anymore, but there's one simple thing. It's something that Stephen Nguyen said that really struck me because of the Minari controversy about where it was kind of pitted. Was he kind of brought up, I forgot where the interview was, maybe it was Variety, but he brought up the idea that being Asian American is really a third culture, right? It's because you're not fully either one. You're not fully American because quote unquote regular Americans or traditional, conventional, what you think is conventional American. You don't fit that look, that style.
Occidental Americans, sir.
The Occidental American thing. We aren't. You can't just go up and go back to China. I can't go back to Vietnam and suddenly like I'm that. And yet we live in this weird kind of middle ground of this thing, because there's not this like this. The Asian American experience isn't one encompassing thing. Like, I didn't grow up in a city. I grew up in Arkansas. I was the only one. I grew up primarily around African American kids, and then got into theater, and then I was around a lot of white kids. So my voice, my culture is so built on all those things and how it's had to maneuver through those things. Because basically at a certain point, everyone's like, you can't sound like the kids from your neighborhood because that you got to stop doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because for all the racist things that was implied in that was like, you're not going to get far. You're going to sound like that. So then I started to try to neutralize my language and become like how I sound right now, very neutral. And then people were like, oh, then my friends from my neighborhood are now going, now you sound like a white guy. I'm like, wait. No, you don't understand. I was told not to sound like you because it sounded like I was like appropriating or doing something. But then I realized, but all that is part of that third culture. That third culture is something that we're in. And it's weird to call it like, I don't think I ever tried to pretend to be like my white counterparts or my black counterparts. I was just what I was in the moment that I was growing up. And to not acknowledge that that's part of my being feels disingenuous. To go, I was trying to be a black kid wasn't true. I was just I wanted to be a black kid because those are my friends. I wanted to be like my friends. I wasn't like, I think that was, I guess there was that I want to be like the dominant culture. But when I say the dominant culture, I meant the dominant culture of my neighborhood, not that of America, because my view of America was very little in 1995, right? Like, I had no access to that. And so it's just like one of those things where I don't like to think that I am trying to be a thing. I am my thing. My existence is real. My agency over my being is real. I am influenced both negatively and positively from the experiences around me. But I don't like thinking that my experience has been lessened somehow by being Asian American. I feel like it's super, super rich because it's Asian American. But it is, I don't get to speak Vietnamese as well as my parents. And I will never no one will consider me Captain America the way they do Chris Evans. But my experience is true. It's full. It's legit. It is not some bastardized version of either. It is what it is. It is Asian American. It is what Therese grew up with, is what you grew up with, Jimmy. And though there's a city version and a not so city version, this is an experience that, like, when Stephen brought it up, it really moved me. That it's like, I don't want to lessen it anyway. Yeah. It is our experience, and we spend a lot of time saying we're second to something. I'm like, I'm done with that shit. So I'm like, going, okay. And that's, I don't credit I credit Stephen saying that. And he has been so beautifully vocal about it in such a non-aggressive way, just beautifully celebrating what it means in this moment where you had that spotlight, and you get that spotlight and you get to say some beautiful words. He said some beautiful things that have just moved me. And literally, this is a relevant side. I'm not super articulate about it just yet, but it is something that I've been thinking about the last few months. I'm like, God damn it. You're right. Yeah. I think I needed someone to fucking say it for once. Yeah. That my reality is worth celebrating. It's not just where I'm like, oh, the Asians and Americans get it. Like, me as an Asian American is a real thing that
having
is a
those
real
conversations with other Asian Americans is also like important, because I feel like a lot of that like feeling, you know, kind of like I don't know where I belong was a lot of like where I grew up, at least like up until high school, I spent a lot of time around, you know, white people, Latinos, and it wasn't like I didn't have a lot of friends who were Asian, especially at that age range. And that was like right when I went to China. Like the last time I went to China, I was like 14. So it was right before I went to high school. You know, it was a very big culture shock. But then like coming back and going to high school, of course, my parents sent me to one of those like, you know, feeder schools, like very, you know, academically aggressive schools. And obviously at that point I'd met a lot of Asian people all at once, and a lot of other Asian Americans who were from, you know, Korean Americans and Vietnamese Americans. Like it was just getting to understand that, and also understanding other Asian cultures and understanding and meeting them from the perspective of like, oh, we all have this common ground of being children of immigrants, being first generation Asian Americans, which is also, of course, different from people who have been around for many generations in America, because that story is very different, you know. So I think it's always fun to have those types of conversations with other Asians, you know.
And we're never too old to learn. As I said, we're still retraining our brains. I'm still learning things left and right, you know, about things where I'm like, oh, I may have allowed that to happen because I thought it was funny, or I thought this and that. And I'm like, I can't allow that anymore.
Oh no, for sure. Like I think that my biggest regret is the fact that growing up I was a class clown, and part of the clowning that I did was I clowned on myself.
Yeah,
you know, it was like, I'm gonna joke about me before you can. And now I'm like that I you know, those are, you know, I can't take back what I did in the past, but those were things that I'm like, oh, I'm not proud of that shit at all now. You know, because that wasn't helping me and wasn't helping like the Asian kids they would run into later.
Well, my thing was like, I would always like imitate like my dad or my aunt, because, you know, I always joke how like the Filipino language, that I think the accent's so funny to me, and I would do it. But then I started noticing friends felt comfortable around me and would sort of do it with me, my white friends, and I never thought anything of it. And I was like, oh, that's sort of on me. I was like, I need to stop doing that. Like if it's done in a joke premise where I was like, if you're a stand-up where you're talking about, you know, a story like where everyone makes fun of the parents and their accents and this and that, of course, but I was just doing it in real life, joking around with friends. And then I started noticing, I'm like, oh, I need to stop that. And I had a talk with my friend, my best friends from Florida, who's white, and he was like, yeah, man, you did that a lot. Like you did it a lot, and he never did it, but he was like, yeah, but some of their friends, I could see how they might think it's okay because you're your friend and they feel comfortable.
Not okay.
It's not. And that's what it took me a long time to learn that. But I was like, oh yeah, I should probably not use an
especially like the white friends who started doing it, like
and then I was like, oh, the thing is I allowed it. I'm like, oh yeah, well, that's funny where it's doing it. But I was like, oh, what if they're doing it when they're not with me? Is what I started thinking. I'm like, if you're with me, I was like, okay, you're with me. I've sort of allowed that. But what if it now makes you comfortable to do that? And I don't.
And they excuse it and say like,
well, my friend.
But Jimmy lets.
Yeah, it's my friend. You know, it's like, I thought that was a good idea with Therese. Just I'm gonna rat off a couple little shows as well that star some great Asian Americans here. Of course, man, speaking of Marvel, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Asians of S.H.I.E.L.D. as I call it, right? Because they had the great Ming-Na Wen and Chloe Bennett in it, which was awesome. We had what nice to see there. Riverdale wisely had Ross Butler, and when he left they wisely replaced him with another Asian American, thankfully, with Charles Melton. Yeah, who's dreamy, and clearly Veronica thought so too, because they got together in real life. And we have, of course, mentioned the Terror, Nikita, Lovecraft
Kim's
Country,
Convenience,
Jamie Chung. It is Canadian, but we got to give it love to Kim's Convenience.
We draw the line.
We mentioned British Asians. There's a ton of British Asians.
Throw a lot of Canadians on the show, according to Jimmy.
Exactly.
That's right. Sorry, they got their own show. I'm just kidding. No, I just started watching Kim's Convenience. It is fantastic. It is a very both Korean and Canadian show though, because they do. There's a lot of Canadianism, which is great. Like the Surrey, you know, I love it.
Hey Jimmy, Canadians are people too.
Listen, I love, Toronto's been one of the cities I've thought of moving to. I love Toronto. And there's a big Asian community. My cousins live in Canada. I have Filipino cousins in Canada.
But I think if you talk to a Canadian, though, they would say that they're probably still Asian American because they're still North American.
Yes, absolutely. There you go. But I do remember, I think the reason
I'm Asian Canadian, but just to be clear, we're also American. Yeah, we are part of North America.
Absolutely.
Right. Sorry.
But I remember as a kid,
I was putting you down a step.
No, yeah.
Canadian.
No, by no means, of course, am I doing that. But I remember as a kid, my cousin telling me when she traveled to France, they bought these little Canadian flags to wear because they didn't want the French to think they were Americans. because
the French people aren't that bad. I went there as a high schooler, and we all thought they were going to be mean, and they were the nicest country.
Yeah, that's what I hear. But I think at the time, though, there was tension or whatever.
Avoid Paris. Paris is where
I was in Paris. It was great.
Anyway, we'll move on. Lovecraft Country had Jamie Chung had a fantastic storyline in that. Of course, she was. I love Jamie Chung. She's great. Like, who knew coming from like MTV, Real World or whatever it was. She was on. It's like she would turn.
I didn't know she was from Real World.
Yeah, she was like, was it San Diego? I think. Yeah, one of the earlier ones.
Wow.
Yeah, she started out there.
I was not a fan of her being cast as Mulan, though. I thought that was a questionable choice on the casting director's part in Once Upon a Time.
Yeah. Once Upon a Time.
I was like, okay, well, I see what you're doing there.
I do like.
Guess we all look alike, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, and then we get SNL finally, Bowen Yang is on. I know Rob Sanders a quarter Filipino. I know Fred Armisen's a quarter Korean, but Bowen Yang, to see someone like that, who's I feel finally coming into his own on that show.
They're letting him do so much more this year, and he's so funny. I mean,
the funniest thing he did was something, because they were throwing him into a lot of like, here's an Asian role, take it. I was like, oh, come on.
When he played the iceberg, though,
the iceberg is the funniest thing he's done, and it's clearly nothing to do with ethnicity. So that's really great to see.
He's a great Elton John too. Like,
he was. You're right. Yeah,
he was a great Elton John.
Yeah, but speaking of Mulan, the movie, I know that was very problematic. When I first thought I enjoyed it, then I went back and started thinking about it. And John and I talked about it. Hosh and I, we reviewed it and really liked it. But then we were like, we know there's probably some things we're missing here. And then sure enough, after we recorded, we looked at it like, oh wow. Like, I still don't forgive. Like, you can't tell me they couldn't have found an Asian director. You can't tell me they couldn't have found an Asian fight team. You can't tell. That's what really bugged me a lot about it, and the fact that where they shot, where there's a lot of like things with the prisoners or something something there going on with some sort of where they shot something happened was not a good thing, obviously.
China has a like that's the problem
that had
they've had for a while.
Yeah, so unfortunate. Yeah, but there were some again. Team A was in that, and had some really great Asian Americans in there, which was great to see.
Also, shout outs to the FX show Devs, which stars Sonoya Mizuno.
Nice,
amazing show. Very weird, very odd show that I don't fully enjoy, but like a great thing to watch and think about. I loved her in it. I just had some thoughts about that ending, but I mean, shout out to her. She's great in it. And she was also in Crazy Rich Asians.
And you probably saw this tweet, Into the Badlands starring Daniel Wu. He was the best fight choreography on TV at the time.
It was
incredible fight choreography. Like I wish Iron Fist would have paid attention to that because it sucked. But anyway, the fights were terrible.
We've had so much Iron Fist hatred.
I hate it. Sorry, it's not much I hate, but Iron Fist I hate it. The best thing about it was Colleen Wing. It should have starred her, as Iron Fist, which we almost saw coming into the
to bring all of those Netflix Marvel shows except Iron Fist. Like, let's bring all that over and then like.
Or if they bring it back, let it be Colleen Wing. Let it be Jessica Henwick. Yeah.
So you guys, I'll jump in here with just a quick question and just how, we have so many wonderful shows and performers and directors, behind the scenes people that we're talking about. And Kui, like you've talked a lot about being in Hollywood and how it is, and the experience. I mean, do you think that it's finally taken hold this time? I mean, do you think, obviously Korean culture with with Parasite winning Best Picture last year was really great, and Minari's, so it's having that moment that you see. And I mean, have people really figured it out this time? I hope.
I don't know. I mean, these moments have happened in the past. Like you look in the '80s, you had Joy Luck Club, you had those moments. You had them in the '90s. Like you have those moments. You at this point, you just hope that things have changed. You do have a lot more people behind the camera. You have a lot more producers out in Hollywood, and so with that, and just being in, I know that the small difference between now and then is a lot of us speak to each other. There's a little bit more of a quote unquote coalition in a way that though because there's still not, though there's more of us, it's not like so many that I can't keep up with all of them. Like we're all kind of communication with each other. We send each other, you see these quote unquote gold opens, we're all trying to celebrate each other. We're all trying to keep kind of lift each other up, because as you're hearing a lot of first right now, right? Like first so and so winning this, first Asian female director to win that. You want to be the first of many. You don't want to be the first and only, right? Like it's great that Kelly Marie Tran got to be like the first Southeast Asian princess, but I'm like, I hope that this is not the last one in many years, right? I'm glad that that you get to have a Crazy Rich Asians, but there's like a whole series of books. I hope there's so many more. I hope I get to see the one where Gemma Chan gets to be the lead in that. I want to see all those things, but we'll see. Like you don't want to be the thing that you're like the flavor of the month of the year, as it were. I know that I have a career. I know that Adele Lim has a career. I know these directors we just talked about have careers, and these actors do too. And I hope that these careers are long-lasting ones that open bridges for more people to that we're building trails for people to come in behind us, not just for ourselves. I think if we can do that, if we can be good allies to not just us and ourselves, but to the future generations, I think that there's hope that this does become a more diversified field. Because again, that's not to say that I want to just be Asian stories out there. I just want us to have the same ability and flexibility and variety to be able to do so many different things with all our peers of all the different races that work in Hollywood. But for that to happen, there just needs to be more of us in all the positions that are out there. And I think that we're working our asses off to make sure that happens.
That's
yeah,
wonderful.
I think a good start, we have to mention, of course, and we briefly mentioned at the top, but Kui and Adele Lim wrote this fantastic Disney film, Raya and the Last Dragon, that celebrates all Asian cultures throughout it. I was so moved. Queen and I had a great talk about it a few weeks ago on the podcast. And it's great. It's great because it is coming from two writers of Asian descent. The team went out to various areas in Southeast Asia and research, and of course, as we've mentioned, food plays a big part of it. You see, Vietnamese food, you see Filipino fight sticks, you see all these different styles of cultures represented, and that's such an important thing. And I thank Guida, and I thank him again, because it was such a great thing to see on screen, to be represented in a Disney film for once. I was like, oh my God, a Filipino fight style with Filipino sticks. Oh my God, thank you.
Yeah,
really great.
It's definitely very Hollywood self-congratulatory, and as to how they do it. But I did want to note that they finally turned against the Golden Globes and the Hollywood Foreign Press Association.
It took,
like,
unfortunately, it takes someone like Tom Cruise to do
we'll
it.
see how long that is.
We'll see how long it lasts. But Therese and I have had a couple conversations, and Jimmy too, because like these people who ran that were, like they're people who wore the funny hats at the junkets always,
Yeah. Well, that's
anyway,
the thing. It's about
time.
Yeah, just about that. Like I said, it took someone like Tom Cruise and a big name to sort of speak out against it, which is great, thankful. But we need more of that with what's still happening. It was great when Ed Skrein, for whether it was his idea or him and the studio's idea, to step down out of Hellboy because he realized his character was Japanese and he wasn't, and he said that's great, but we need Scarlett Johansson to step down.
I was like, somebody should have told Scarlett Johansson.
We need Emma Stone to be like,
15 years ago.
This is why I don't, and make a big deal about it. I was offered this role, but I turned it down because I'm not Hawaii descent Emma Stone. I'm not all this other stuff, and like we need them,
Emma Stone,
those big names, to say that why they don't, and we need to refuse those roles. You don't need that new pool or that new car, or that new house. That bad.
Well, shout out to producers too. Like I feel like seeing more Asian producers, like someone who comes to mind is Nina Yang Bon Jovi. She works with Forest Whitaker. They're, partners for significant productions. And she has not produced a lot of like big like Asian movies, but as like an Asian producer, she has played very prominently in, a lot of her movies have been like top hitting movies, especially like stories about Black Americans. There's Fruitvale Station, of course. There's Sorry to Bother You. I think she's worked with Ryan Coogler too, and she's worked with Chloe Zhao. I went to like a talk where she was talking at Sundance a couple of years ago, and I was just like, she's like, a lot of people who come up to me are typically like young, like Black women who want to be a part of like the industry. And she's like, I would love for, to see Asian Americans, like young Asian American women, come up to talk to me too, because just because she's not directing or creating these films about Asian stories necessarily, like she is an Asian producer who is like making, big splashes within the industry. Like, I think that feels like very, very American. And that gave me more hope than, like the Hollywood Foreign Press, like, oh, we finally seen the error of our ways. Like, okay, well, we'll see how long that lasts. Yeah. Emily in Paris, I will not forget that. But I think that like gives me more hope of like this gradual change. And I'm a fan of not like making huge leaps, because I feel like when that happens, people freak out and then they're like, oh, we can't handle this. And then suddenly we jump back like 10 steps and we don't see Asians. Think about like Bruce Lee entered into the industry so long ago and it kind of just all faded away. Like he wanted so badly to like have this, this very mixed, very diverse industry. And it wasn't at a time when people could accept him. He couldn't even play. Warrior, we want to talk about that. Like that was allegedly based off of one of his script treatments that was just stolen away from him and turned into Kung Fu, which we are also experiencing right now. Like, I don't know. Yeah. I tend to be like a forever pessimist because I don't trust people, but hopefully things change. I don't know.
Yes.
Well, I think you're right though. It's really incumbent on Emma Stone's and Scarlett Johansson's and a lot of other people to say, you know what, this is not for me.
Yeah.
This should be for authenticity. So.
Yeah. And I do want to give a shout out just to a couple other like obviously seeing Kelly Marie Tran, the starring in Raya and the Last Dragon. Of course, we saw her in Star Wars and got the unbelievable, terrible hate that she got. It's glad to see her still persevering.
Just a couple of years ago too.
Yeah, it's still it was fantastic in Raya, and I look forward to more that she can bring. There's so many great actors and actors we can go through. Margaret Cho, Kelly Hu's in the Finding Ohana movie. My God, we can go through Kimiko Glenn. Manny
all the people that Jimmy casts.
Santos. Yes,
he casts every week on our casting. Our Asian
Vanessa Hudgens, who Filipino, who I love, and I want to see more from Vanessa. Obviously, even Haley Steinfeld's part Filipino, and also we mentioned Camille, Danny Pudi, Mindy Kaling, of course, had the Mindy Project. So many great actors out there. Yeah. So many.
So a quick question, because I think I know Queen and Jimmy have to actually bail. Yeah, so what last question here though for upcoming projects? Is there an upcoming project that's either any of the genres behind the scenes, in front of the camera that we've been talking about that you guys are looking forward to, especially? And we'll say Shang-Chi set aside. We all want to see that. We all want to see that. So not something that's not Shang-Chi.
The next Nguyen project, I am definitely looking forward
absolutely
to.
Here for
Cannot
that.
wait.
Yes.
For
Absolutely.
Sure. For sure.
Still in Marvel. I'm still very much looking forward to Eternals. Like that one I feel like is going to be a big game changer. I love that. One of the leads in it is Gemma Chan, and it's not Shang-Chi is like, it's cultural. Everyone's Asian in that, but it's also great to see an Asian lead in a cast that's not necessarily all Asian, because you're also like going, hey, they can just lead a movie. That's a great thing, because we've definitely seen the movie where the white guy shows up into Japan and it's like, oh look, I'm the best samurai, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
nice to
Like
see
how.
they go,
Looking
oh
at
wait.
you, Wolverine.
Yeah. Well,
So
look at The Last Samurai. Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
True.
So it's nice to see the reverse on things like that. But yeah, I mean, I know stuff that's coming up, and I'm excited about a lot of things that my peers are making right now, and getting to be involved in. I would say just a little thing when we were talking about the yeses and nos of Hollywood. I think the one small difference, again, I never experienced Hollywood pre the moment I'm in, but I do think that what's nice, the evolution I've talked about to several of my peers here, is the difference between how we started in this business versus where we are now. And when we started, I think, and this isn't just Asians, this is a lot of people of marginalized groups, whether you're Black, Asian, Latinx, non-gender, gay, whatever it was, you end up being in a place where you're always trying to please the majority. It's a colonized mindset, right? Trying to like, oh, I don't want to push forward a story about being Asian because that's going to make me the Asian writer or the person of color writer. I'm just trying to,
Right.
That's side where I'm only here for the quote unquote story. And that the subtle thing that you're saying in that is like the story that you're telling is more important than you being part of it. And I think that the big thing that has kind of shifted is when we talk to each other and I see, my peers in the room, is we're no longer afraid to say, hey, it's fucked up that we just defaulted to white male. Like, I don't know why we just defaulted to that. Why? Is there a reason to why we defaulted that? Because when we default to that as the quote unquote universal, or that becomes the baseline, we're saying that we're all outside of that baseline. We're all outside of that we don't get to be the heroes. And so I think that because we've all become more vocal and we're all empowering each other to be more vocal, I hope that helps with the longevity of this becoming a long-lasting thing and not just a moment, because that is always the fear, that this is a moment in time, that's a overcorrection or a correction, and you're like, no, it should just the correct way is this new model where you see a lot more diverse stories, not just from Asian Americans, but from all of us who haven't been able to tell our stories, see ourselves on screen.
Excellent. Yeah.
For sure.
There's been some great, I'm sure there's more coming besides Ride. There's another couple other great animated films too. I loved Over the Moon, had some great, like had Margaret Cho as a voice, Sandra Oh, really great. I love that film. And then I think it's pronounced Nietzsche Reborn, that's on Netflix, based on the old Chinese folklore. They've got more coming from that too, so I'm looking forward to see what they have coming as well. So yeah, a lot of great
I think
stuff.
there's also a Wish, I think.
Wish Dragon.
Wish Dragon, yeah.
It's coming on Netflix, I think, in a few weeks.
Dragon.
Yeah.
Nice.
Excellent.
I also want to shout out, it's coming out soon. I also watched it at Sundance. Yes, I watched a lot of my movies at Sundance. It's 9 Days by Edson Oda. He's I think he's Brazilian, Japanese director, and it stars Winston Duke, Zazie Bates, Benedict Wong, and Bill Skarsgård. I think there's a couple other people, but it's an amazing like sci-fi movie. It's coming out in July. And it is wild. I mean, it took me on a trip, and it was like philosophical and emotional. It's just amazing. I mean, he's behind the scenes. The director is Asian, and of course Benedict Wong. But a really cool
Benedict.
story.
Yeah.
And
I saw
also,
the trailer for that, and it looked oof. Yeah.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
you're gonna.
I mean,
I can't wait for people to see it. I interviewed Zazie Bates for Invincible, and I was like telling her, I was like, this was one of my favorite movies of the festival. Like that and Minari were like my top two. And also Blossoms by Wong Kar-wai making his return back to television. I don't know where that's going to be, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to be distributed in America immediately, but Wong Kar-wai is one of my favorite directors, and I grew up watching him. So In the Mood for Love, 2046.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that man.
Awesome.
And I also wanted to shout out to Taika, because like I think that we often forget that the PI of API, he's Maori, that's his background, and I think he's just keeps knocking balls out of the park left and right, from big Hollywood films like Thor Ragnarok to like obviously like his personal projects have been incredible, like Jojo Rabbit. It's just just seeing him, and also just how he's just kind of changing. Yeah, exactly. Like he keeps pushing the form, not just like just a story. He's so creative, and I think he continues to inspire so many of us.
For sure. Excellent.
100%.
All right. We need to get out of here, I think.
Yeah, we got to get going.
So many more things to mention.
I know, so many more things we could go for, but
Thank
it's been a fun and informative chat. I'm definitely going to check out some things you guys mentioned.
And I will put I've been keeping a list. I'm going to put it in the comments so we have some reference for things so that people can check it out. So
awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening and watching on YouTube Live and now listening on the Comic News Insider later on. I am Jimmy Aquino, the host producer of Comic News Insider, the weekly podcast covering comics, TV, film, and pop culture. If you want to find me online, it's at comicnewsinsider.com. But you can find me at Jimmy Aquino, that's JIMMYAQUINO on all the socials.
And I'm Heidi McDonald, editor-in-chief of The Beat at comicsbeat.com on all social media, Comixace, COMIXACE, and coming to you from beautiful Jefferson, Maine today, but back to New York next week.
And I'm Therese Lacson. I'm the entertainment editor at Comics Beat, and I'm also the co-founding editor at Nerdophiles. You can find me only on Twitter at Bamfpire, BAMFPIRE. Do not find me anywhere else. Those are all my personal.
And I'm Queen.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And we are Kumandra. And thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you all so much. Until next time.